So today we're going to talk about Codeigniter sessions. So the first thing you need to do is load the session library so you can actually use it. If you open your base controller and you go down here, you see that Codeigniter already has like an example on how to load models and libraries and whatever. And one of the examples that they give you is the session. So since our controllers are extending to base controller, to load the session, all we need to do is like uncomment this line and the session is loaded. So now if I reload this, nothing happens because I'm not actually doing anything with the session itself. Let's say I want to work with a session and store something in the session. So how can this be useful for your application? So let's say, for instance, that you want to log a user in, and then you want to keep in your session like what user is logged in at the moment in that specific browser on that computer. You can do that via sessions. But there's loads of useful things that you can do with sessions. For instance, flash data is one of the things that you can actually do, setting temp data, and everything that you can do that with the data that you're going to throw away eventually, and you want to store it somewhere and not in your database, the session is a good start to do so. So let's say, for instance, that I want to store my name in the session. So I have this content here. So this content now is I put it like with nothing, and I can do hello there, and then I'll put something in front of this that will be displayed on my page. But I'm gonna go and set something in the session in another controller, so we can access on this controller. So let's create another controller. I'll duplicate this one and I'll call it my session controller. It's just so it's easier for you to find it. Okay, so I have a session controller. So I'll open another tab here and I'll go to session and I'll see a blank page. So what we're gonna do is first is we're gonna set a session item. So you can do this with your native PHP. So if you want to do it with your native PHP, you would just do session, and then I'll say username equals to Marco. And if I refresh the page, nothing we're gonna show here. But if I go here now I'll have access to this username, and to access I can just do session username, and if I refresh here, now I have hello there Marco. So I'm setting the data in one part of my application and accessing the same data here. And the data will be here as long as my session is active, or until my session is destroyed, or until I change the data into something else. Because I can change the data into something else, because I could actually do something like, let's say, for instance, I'll create another function here. So public function set username, and I'll give this one a permit. So username and I can just say session username equals to username. So now if I go here and go to session set username and I say Marco Data, Nothing happens here because I'm not displaying anything to the browser. But if I go here now my username has changed. So you can see how this is useful, because in a real world application you could actually go and change the values based on how the user interacts with your application, and then store it or remove them. So if I want to just remove something like this, I could just do another function here and remove username, and I could just say this unset username. And now if I go here again, instead of set username, I'll just go to remove username. Session remove username. Because I was expecting a permit and not sending one. So nothing is displayed once again. But if I go here, now I get an error, because now here I'm expecting a username. So you see how this is useful and also dangerous, because you can get exceptions, because if you're displaying something from the session, you should ensure that the session has that variable or that item. So instead of doing unset, what I would do is just do username equals to null. So if I do the username again, now I have a username. The session username key exists, but it has no value. So this is how you work with native sessions. So here, what I'm showing you, I'm not using anything from Codeigniter. From Codeigniter, the only thing I'm using is loading the session library that is doing the session init thing and stuff like that. But other than that, this is basic PHP, and nothing from Codeigniter is being done. But if I was to use the Codeigniter helpers here, I could, instead of doing this, I could do session username, and now I get the same thing but from an object. So if I go here and go and set this as Marco again, I don't have this. So why is that? Because in my base controller, the session is being loaded into this session and not just session. This would work if I had the session loaded inside this controller, but since I have it as a class property, I have to use this. So if I do this again, I can access the username property like this. I could actually do it on some other way, like doing this session get like this, and this gives us just the same result. So you have three ways of getting your data from the session: the native way with the session in the uppercase, or you can do just access as an object, so session and then you access as username in this case, or you can actually use this helper function here. So I already showed you on how to add stuff to the session via the native way, but you can do all of this in the Codeigniter way as well. So if I want to do this in the Codeigniter way, what I will do is just this session, and I would use the set item. So in this case is username, and the set item normally expect this to be or an array or an item itself. So if it is an item itself, I would just use Marco, and if I go here and Marco as a Codeigniter session, And if I go to session again, so I get an error because I'm missing the semicolon here and no errors here. And if I go here, my username is changed. But I could also do this as an array. So if you do this and change this to this, this is just the same thing. But so if I go here, so Codeigniter session array, so it changes, and now it changed. But as you can see here, this allows you to set multiple items at once. So let's say I want to actually have a few of those, and and I'll just do this, another item, and this is me. So if I go here now and I say, instead of displaying the username, I could just display another item, and I get nothing because I haven't updated and created this. So if I do this, now it's working. But you saw a difference there. If you didn't, I'll explain. I haven't set the another item here. This was not set, but when I refreshed the page, it didn't show anything, but it didn't give me an error, and that's very important. That means if you're using the sessions from the Codeigniter and the functions that it provides you, you can bypass this. You don't have to do this. So even if you don't have a username, like for instance, I can just go and use here like foo, and there's no place in our application that I have a session item called foo. So if I refresh this, I don't get any errors. But if I do this, like echo session foo, I'll get an exception. So this is very important. So this is why you should use the Codeigniter sessions instead of the native ones, because the native ones requires you to check the session items if they exist, if they not exist, and stuff like that. But with this one, you don't have to check anything because the session library itself is doing that for you. To remove stuff from the session, you just have to unset it via the native way, or in the Codeigniter way. We have this remove username, so this would be this session remove and then username. So if I go here and I display the username, my username at the moment is this, but now I'm gonna go into the remove username method, and if I go here, I don't have a username anymore. But then again, I still don't have an error because I'm using the session get instead of the native sessions. What about flash data? Flash data is something that you can use on your application, and it's very useful in a production way and in a live environment, and it's normally used to give messages to the user that we'll just need for one request. What does this mean? I'll give you a real life example. Let's say, for instance, that you have some CRUD functionality in your application, and you enter the update method of your article, for instance, and you're updating the article. Once you submit the data and you update the article, you want to give a message to the user. For instance, your article was updated, or there was a problem updating your article. But you want that message to only live for the next request and no further, because after that the user has no need for that message. So that's the use for flash data. So let's do it here. For instance, I'll create here another function. So public flash data test, just flash data. And then, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just echo here a form of sorts, or I can just redirect the user with some flash data. So I'll just set the flash data here and access it on the other way, and then refresh and you'll see. So if I use the CI flash data, no, just flash data. Okay, so I'll say message, this is my flash data. Okay, so this will set a flash data, and I'll access the flash data here. So I'll just do echo this flash data. What was the name that I give it? Message. Sorry. Okay, so if I go here and I refresh the page, I have undefined method home flash data. Oh, sorry. Okay, this session. Okay, and here this is actually wrong because this is set flash data. This was the old way. I messed this up because that snippet from my Sublime was for Codeigniter 3. So this is how you should be using it. Get flash data. That's it. So if I refresh the page with an error, I don't see anything, and that's okay because I haven't accessed this method here that will set the message. So if I go here and I'll go to my method flash data, there's nothing here. But if I go here, I have, this is my flash data. But now this is the thing. If I refresh this page again, like this, I don't have it anymore, because this item here was only accessed for one single use. After this, I don't have access to it anymore. Now, what else is there? There's only one thing that I need to address here, and that's temp data. Temp data is used kind of like the flash data, but the flash data as a single request associated with it, and the temp data has actually a timestamp on it. So you say that you want that item on your session to be available for a predetermined amount of time. So to use that, you can do it as, like, I can do it to the username, like the item already exists, and I can do it to the username, or I can do it to a new item. So to do that, you have two ways of doing it. I'll copy the examples from the documentation to go a bit faster. So let's say public function temp to set the temp data, and this is my temp data here. Okay, so as you can see, I have this way of doing it. Like I can do session, mark as temp data. In our case, would be this session. And this means that this item and this item will last 300 seconds. But I can actually, but if I want item and item 2 to have different expiration dates, I could do it this way. This one has 300, this one has 240. And they will be available for that amount of time, and then they will destroy itself. And this is how you work with the sessions. There's really nothing more to it. You just set session items in one part of your application, and then you can access them in another part of your application. There's most of the applications that I work with, they work with sessions because they have authentication, and authentication normally works with session. I need to work with a session to say if the user has logged in, and then I'll store stuff into the session that is related to that user. So there's a lot of uses to the session, and this is a very important part of Codeigniter and of developing your applications. So if you like this video, please consider subscribing. Give it a like if you feel like it, and I'll see you on the next one.